right, good morning everybody, and welcome to another Bible study on the book of Revelation. We are in chapter 12, so if you have your Bibles, you can open up to Revelation chapter 12. Arguably one of the most confusing passages to a lot of people at first. Like I said, everybody wants to stay away from Revelation 12. The book of Revelation is confusing, let alone Revelation 12, because of all the symbology. But as you can tell as we're going through, it can be understood. It just takes a lot of detective work. Remember, the Bible has patterns and it repeats things, and Revelation is a remix of what happened before, and we're finding that out every week, right? Because we're seeing this all over the place. Now, Revelation 12, remember, it started out, we did 6 verses already. It started out, and a great sign appeared in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. I went over a couple weeks ago, that's a reference to Genesis 37. This is all of Israel, Joseph's dream. This is Israel's the woman here, right? She was pregnant, was crying out in birth pains and the agony of giving birth, referring to the Messiah. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads 7 diadems. Remember last week I talked about this is the opposition to the woman, right? And the 7 heads talk about the 7 kingdoms that have oppressed the world over time, especially Israel too, and how the 10 horns is reflective of the kingdom that's going to come under the Antichrist. The global kingdom that's going to have 10 kings, but ruling under the Antichrist. They'll rule over it. That's what this is referencing here, showing us that all worldly systems, all dictators, all oppressive systems are really under the authority of Satan, right? That's why the dragon here has all this. This is Satan. His tail swept down a third of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, he might devour it. This shows the opposition of Satan opposing the woman, opposing Christ, really, the Messiah. Always really opposing. You could just say, blanket statement, God's plan. He's against God's plan. Whatever God's plan is, he's against it. And that's what it's referring to here. Third of the stars of heaven, that'll come up later. That's a reference to the other angels. Sometimes angels are called stars. So the third of the angels that are evil, the fallen angels we'll call them. All right, and then verse 5 said, she gave birth to a male child, one who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. But her child was caught up to God and to his throne. So, of course, this is Jesus Christ. He came, was born. Remember, Satan literally tried to oppose that whole process. Christ really did ascend. He was raptured, right? In Acts, read Acts. After he came back from the dead, he went up into heaven, just like this is referring to. Also, one day, because we are the body of Christ, we'll follow that same pattern. We will be taken up, right? And then the wrath of the dragon will take place on the earth. It's kind of what this is talking about. So that's kind of what's going on here. And then it says, the woman fled into the wilderness where she has a place prepared by God in which she is to be nourished for 1,260 days. And that time period, 1,260 days, keeps popping up. Remember, if you divide that by 360, that's how many days were in an ancient calendar, 30 days per month, you'll get 3.5. It's 3.5 years. So 42 months, time times time and a half, right? Half a time, it'll say, or 1,260 days. All these different ways of saying 3.5 year periods, right? Splitting the 7-year tribulation into parts, part 1 and part 2, essentially. But Israel is going to be taken, that's the woman, is going to be taken into the wilderness at the time of the wrath. We're going to learn more about this here. But we'll be prepared. The place is going to be prepared by God, right? Just like Jesus told us he'd have a place prepared for us, right? So God already prepares it. He's already going to have it all ready. He'll be the one taking care of Israel, and they will be hidden and prepared and protected in the wilderness for 3.5 years. And that's where we left off, and that's where we're at today. So we're going to pick up now in verse number 7. And now we're going to start focusing on the war in heaven. Another very interesting passage. Verse number 7 here. And war arose in heaven. Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought back. All right, so now we're going to get this war, this conflict in heaven. It's going to kind of zoom into this war, and we're going to kind of get, again, remember that past, present, future kind of a situation where things are going, it's all these tenses all at the same time. But there's a war that arose in heaven, so now the conflict is going to go on to heavenly beings. And war means there's a real conflict. This is kind of mind-blowing for us. Because angels, you know, they don't have physical bodies like we have per se. Like you couldn't kill an angel if they showed up to you. They can't die. So what is going on here? We don't know how it works, but there is some kind of systems they do. There's some kind of physicality to it. We don't know how the spirit world works because we're not there. But there is going to be some kind of real cosmic battle, some kind of conflict. And we talk about the spiritual war all the time. There is real battles going on, at least the way it talks. There's actual fighting and wars between angels going on. And that's what's going on here. It's talking about this cosmic spiritual warfare, which honestly is always going on, and it's reflecting everything that's happening down on earth, right? So what's happening above is dictating what's happening below. That's why we always pray, right, to intercede in the spiritual war. So that's what this is going to talk about. It says this war arose. So something happened for it to arise, right? That means there was nothing, and then it arose. So although there's always war in heaven, this is a special battle, right? Just like you could say, you could say that today. Oh, there's always fights and wars and stuff going on in the world, but there's these certain wars that are bigger, and there's something going on. This is different than what usually you see, right? That's kind of what's going on here. This is also going to be tied. It's going to be important to see this. This is also tied to the midpoint of the tribulation, right? This is tied to, just like before, when the two witnesses were taken up. The witnesses witnessed for the first half, that 3.5 years, and now we're in that middle period. Now there's a turning. They've ascended. They've gone to heaven. And now Satan's going to be mad. He's going to get thrown out. He's very, very angry. So this is what's happening. This war is taking place right in the middle of that 7-year tribulation. That's when this war seems to arise, the one that it's talking about here. But it says he fought with Michael and his angels. Who is Michael? If you've read the Bible a lot, you know. Maybe you're newer to it. Who's Michael? Michael's one of the archangels. And he's mentioned quite a bit of places in the Bible. I've actually mentioned him a couple of weeks ago, or maybe months ago now, I don't know. It's been a while. Remember the two witnesses? Remember I talked about how I believe Moses is one of them, and because, God buried his body, and then Satan fought for his body. Satan fought for somebody. Remember, it was in Jude we find out of this. Verse 9, listen to what it said, remember? But when the archangel Michael, contending with the devil, was disputing about the body of Moses, he did not presume to pronounce a blasphemous judgment, but said, the Lord rebuke you. So Michael and the dragon have fought before. We actually read about it. I referenced it before. They had some war. They had some battle over Moses' body at one point, right? This is that same Michael. This is that same Satan. These are the same ones that fought. So he's already had an impact on this situation here. The reason a lot of this is going on, you can see Michael's been involved. Michael brought Moses' body back somehow. And if you look into this, Michael is somehow tied with resurrection. I don't know the details completely of it, but when you see resurrection, that voice of the archangel we're going to hear, that's Michael. He brought Moses back. In Daniel 12 it talks about this. So there's something, God's given him some kind of power associated with resurrection, but there's some kind of war going on here. Probably once that happened and they got brought back up, there's another war that arises. It's the same Michael. Go to Daniel chapter 10 though. We've seen Michael in other places. Daniel chapter 10. Now here he didn't necessarily fight with the devil, he didn't fight with the dragon, but he did in a way, because just like I said earlier, and I said last week, all the evil worldly systems are run by Satan. So that's essentially fighting the dragon, right? If you're at war with a worldly government today that you think's evil, say if you think, Iran or China or whoever, Russia, you think one of these are evil, whatever they're doing evil is the dragon. The dragon is behind it. Satan is behind it. But look at Daniel chapter 10. Go to verse 13. Daniel chapter 10, verse 13. And we'll go the 2 verses here. We'll read. The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But Michael, there he is, one of the chief princes, came to help me. For I was left there with the kings of Persia, and came to make you understand what is to happen to your people in the latter days. For the vision is for days yet to come. That's interesting. Now look down at verse 20. Go down a little bit further. Then he said, do you know why I have come to you? But now I will return to fight against the prince of Persia. There it is again. And when I go out, behold, the prince of Greece will come. But I will tell you what is inscribed in the book of truth. There is none who contends by my side against these, except Michael, your prince. That's him. So notice, he's referencing Daniel 10. Why am I taking you here? Well, it said Michael is one of the chief princes. So a chief prince, archangel, there's that language prince. Well, I know Michael's not a real person. He's not a prince on the earth. So this has some spiritual prince language. This is very similar to Ephesians when you hear about thrones, princes, principalities, dominions. These are ranks of spirits. Because look at the prince of Persia. He was out fighting with. Michael had to go fight the prince of Persia, which means there's some evil high-ranking god of Persia, the gods of Persia, the spirits. There's some evil high-ranking spirit that was actually preventing Daniel's prayers from being answered. Daniel here is praying. He's actually fasting and praying for 3 weeks, 21 days. And he can't get his answer because there's a war in heaven going on. That's basically what this is talking about. But here he's fighting with Persia. What's really interesting, if you go down to verse number 20, it said, behold, the prince of Greece will come. What's really interesting about that, we live way after this time, so you just read right past it. But this was written to Daniel. Now Daniel's back in the times of Babylon and Persia. Greece doesn't come till after Daniel dies. So look at this. There's a war going on where he even knew after he defeated the prince of Persia, there was going to be another prince of Grecia, or Greece. But Greece didn't come yet. But if you know history, Greece conquers Persia later on. So you can see this has been hundreds of years in the future, or 100 years earlier, there was this event that happened, and you can already see Greece was fighting. Greece was fighting Persia in the spirit realm before it came hundreds of years later, because there's some kind of a delay from the spirit world to the earthly realm. But we're seeing that Michael has fought before. He is the chief prince. He has fought Persia. He's fought Greece. That means he probably what? He probably fought the prince of Egypt. He probably fought the prince of Assyria. He probably fought the prince of Rome. He just didn't write about it, right? He's fought all these princes. Michael's fought all of them, you'll find out, because he's heavily associated with Israel, right? So you can see this chaos is building. And why does Michael show up? Because, remember, everything's pivoted to Israel. We're pivoting to Israel now. They're about to wake up. Remember, they were blind. Romans 11 tells us Israel is blind right now. That's why if you go over to Israel right now, they're not Christian. They wouldn't believe in Jesus. They're still blind. But they will be woken up. And that's what's happening at this point. The Antichrist breaks that 7-year deal. He claims himself to be God, right? And now the Jews have to run and hide. They believe in Christ. And this is where all anti-Semitism comes from, honestly, right? Now, I'm not saying either that, you can't disagree with the government of Israel for doing something. You can't disagree with Israel or whatever. But this is where anti-Semitism, this is why people start to hate the Jews in Israel. If you ask them why, and they'll start with this weird reason, and then it spirals into, this hatred. I know people right now that it's happening to, that I actually know. But where does this hatred come from? It comes from Satan. Satan knows this is part of it. It's a revelation. This is going to happen. So he's always trying to snuff them out. If he can snuff Israel out, if he can snuff the Jews out, he can eliminate this plan, which God wrote, so it's definitely going to happen. But Michael's defending them because Michael is the defender of Israel. So you found out about, I talked about the prince of Persia, the prince of Greece. I talk all the time about the gods, the Gentile gods, right, of Tower of Babel. How every nation, even today, has an evil god or spirit that is over them. But then remember, God had his own nation of Israel. And God put Michael over Israel in the same fashion. Why did he do that? Why, although God is the God of Israel, why did I put it and then he put Jesus or God over Israel? Why? Because he is not an equal. These are not equals. He's not going to be on equal terms with these things. He'll put his own being, his own princess that he created as well to war and fight. So we're getting a peek at what I always talk about, the Gentile gods. But every time you saw a war, and you saw, for example, when you saw Elijah on Mount Carmel and Baal fighting, that was going on. That was the dragon and Michael behind the scenes. We're getting basically what it's telling us, this has been going on all the time. Michael, when there's a thing with Israel going on, Michael's at war with the dragon, with this other, Gentile god, just this prince, along with Satan. You can see that here. And it's going on here. Daniel 12, if you're still there, you can actually flip ahead 2 more chapters and just look at the first verse. Michael's mentioned again, and he's mentioned about this exact time period I'm talking about. Daniel 12, verse 1, it told us about this event. Daniel was told about it. It said, at that time shall arise who? Michael, the great prince who has charge of your people. Who is your people? Well, he's talking to Daniel. Daniel's people are the Jews, right? So, right here, we have it. Michael, the great prince who's in charge of your people, the Jews. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never has been seen since there was a nation till that time. But at that time your people shall be delivered. Everyone whose name shall be written in the book. Right there it said it. He said, hey, in the end, it's going to be the worst than you've ever seen it for your people. Michael will show up. He'll defend your people. Don't worry. Right? It's going to be awful. Nobody's ever seen that before. But at that time, you'll be delivered. It sounds not like this. But God will prepare a place in the wilderness. You'll be taken care of. That is what this is talking about. Daniel chapter 12, I think, is getting a vision of this. Because, again, this is pivoting to Israel and the Jewish people. That's what this focus is really about in this chapter. Their eyes are going to be open. That's why Michael makes an appearance. Because he's their bodyguard. He's their security, right? He's a security leader. He's their war general. He's basically the war general of Israel. And I love that it calls him the chief princes. Here's how I think of it. There's 2 angels named in the Bible. There's one that is Michael. Who's the other one? Who's the other angel that's named? Gabriel, good. Gabriel. So there's 2 angels named. So they both are pretty important. And here's how I think of it. God has his own departments, almost like a CEO does. You have your leaders of all these things. So you got Gabriel. What is Gabriel always doing? Gabriel is always coming to give a message of the messianic kingdom. The Messiah is going to come. He's going to rule. Gabriel's always doing this. What is he? He's the chief of communications. He's the PR guy. So Gabriel is God's like chief of communications, if you know in the C-suite what that would be. So what is Michael? Michael would be like chief of security. He's a chief of security. He's the war director, like Department of War. He's in charge of that. So you can see he's always in charge of the war, security in the kingdom, security in heaven, security in Israel, protecting them. And Gabriel never really worries about that. He's always worried about delivering these messages. He's a communication director. So you can see even the angels God have these different jobs about them. This is why Michael's is this. That's why Gabriel shows up, because they're in charge of their own departments. And that's why it says he's one of the chief princes, because that's what he does. And it says, of course, here he's fighting against the dragon. I already told you that was Satan. So you got the holy angels and the false, because I got Michael and his angels. His angels are really God's angels, right? They're on the good side. They follow God. And then you have the dragon and his angels. Who are those angels? Well, those are, if you look at Revelation 12, verse 4, a couple verses back, remember it says his tail swept down a third of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth? That's them. Those are the angels, a third of them. So right now, God's up 2-1, right? God's up 2-1, 2 angels to 1 angel. But these are fallen angels, not to be confused with demons, although sometimes we'll call them demons. They're demonic, meaning they oppose, God. But these are different demons, or maybe disembodied Nephilim, we think, right? But these are the fallen, evil angels, and they're also fighting. So what does this tell us? This shows us that Satan fights back. Why is Satan fighting back? Because I think he's getting an eviction notice. He's getting kicked out. Border Patrol showed up, essentially. He says, hey, you got to leave. You can't come back in. So, of course, he's kicking and screaming. Satan's kicking and screaming. He says, I'm not leaving heaven. I'm not getting out of here. And this war breaks out. So it shows us evil will always resist. When you got to do something good and you got to change something that's evil, don't be surprised when the evil gets louder and it starts to get stronger and it starts to lash out. You probably see this in life in some forms. That's what Satan does, and that's what he does here. But this whole verse here reminds us spiritual warfare is very real. As I even read in Daniel 10, it affects our lives. So heaven is very active in earth's story, although we forget that sometimes, which is why prayer is important, which is why you should pray without ceasing, because I don't know how to use a sword in the spirit world, but God and Michael and the angels can, right? You pray to God, he'll take care of it all. Michael will take care of whatever he's got to take care of, to whatever, right? But you can see they are very active, and you can also see that God uses his angelic agents like Michael and others to do his bidding. Why? Because I love this. Satan is not an equal. Satan would love to be an equal to God, but you won't even see here, that's what I love, it doesn't say now war rose and God and Satan fought. It doesn't say that. That's how our minds think of things. You go out and talk to anybody in the world, it's Satan versus Jesus, Satan versus God. Although it kind of looks like that in the sermon, it's really not, because they're not even close. That's a creator versus a creation. That's never equal. That's never been equal, right? So that's what's going on here. And it's fascinating to see. Also, you can see how this is escalating. First, remember, verse 1, a woman appears. So talk about Israel. Then the dragon appears. Then the child is born. Then it triumphs. Then the woman's protected and war breaks out. You can see it just keeps escalating and escalating and escalating. And that's how it's going to be in the end. They fought back. And look what it says, though, in verse number 8. But he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. So, how wild is this? We've been reading about him in chapter 12. He is a great red dragon with 7 heads, 10 horns, sweeping down stars, and he fights. He sounds like this great big monster that I wouldn't want to tell this story to my son before bed, right? About this dragon. Sounds so terrifying. But then, but he was defeated. Super simple, but he was defeated. 4 words. He, of course, referred to Satan. And you'd imagine we got this, this great, like I said, that whole analogy of, or the symbolism of who he is, this great big monster. What do you expect, like in a storybook? Like, if I turn this into publishing, the publisher would probably return it and say, hey, listen, I love what you did with the dragon, you built him up really good, but then you kind of lost me in the battle. Where was the battle scene? Like, you built him up, and then where was this? And he fought. There was no battle scene. Why? And then, whoever, John would say, well, hey, God told me to write it like this because there was really no battle. It wasn't equal. And basically the story here is God's letting us know this is not an equal battle. There's no battle scene because it wasn't intense. Although it looked intense, God always wins. He can give as much might and power to Michael, so it's still lopsided. Even Michael's fighting. But Jesus didn't even fight him. There's no battle scene, so it's just trying to let us know that Satan is nowhere near as strong as God and his angels. It's just so lopsided. He got built up so strong, and then in 4 words, but he was defeated. That's it. So it's kind of a slap in the face of Satan. I think God designed it that way. And look what it says. There is no longer any place for them. Who is them? Well, that's, again, Satan and his angels. So the access is revoked. No longer means something, right? If I said, hey, you no longer can drive a Lamborghini, you'd say, I never drove one. How can I no longer do something I never did, right? So no longer means he was formerly permitted. These angels are formerly permitted, right? So Satan had some form of access in the heavenly realm. Go to Job chapter 1. We have proof of this. This checks out. You can do your research in the Bible. Go to Job chapter 1. And we can find something really interesting here, which will go right hand in hand with this verse that we're reading about here. Job chapter 1, go to verse number 6, if you're there. Job chapter 1, verse number 6. All right. Now we're going to read about the sons of God. Remember the sons of God in Hebrew, that's B'nai Ha-Elohim. That's always a reference to spiritual beings. So we're about to see a scene. We're going to see a spiritual heavenly scene with God and these high-ranking angels, okay? Job chapter 1, verse 6. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. So he had access. Wow. The Lord said to Satan, from where have you come? Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth, and from walking up and down on it. Isn't that interesting? Look at that. From walking up and down on it. What does that tell me from that passage there? Satan got to come in. So there was some kind of angelic meeting, high angel power meeting. They roll in, the sons of God are here with God, and then Satan shows up, right? Somehow he got through security, so security didn't stop him, and I don't think Michael's a bad angel that Satan could slip through. He defeated him, right? So he's let in. He had access. He even said, where did you come from? Oh, I was walking up and down the earth. What does that mean? From the spirit world down to the earth to the spirit realm. Just like the angels I say now, all the weird stuff going on, they can come down, they can go back, they can come down. So he's been doing this before. He's had access, and we read that in Job there. But now this access ends. That's what's going on here, right? Is access to heaven. Expulsion from the heavenly realm. So he's kicked out of heaven. Now again, this is important, right? It's not annihilation. A lot of Christians, a lot of really good Christians who I love, sometimes will get a lot of this stuff, what's going on wrong. They'll say, well, hey, they're going to be down there now. They didn't believe Jesus. They're down there in hell now with Satan. Like, no, they're not. Because hell didn't even get the lake of fire you're talking about. Hasn't even been created yet. That's called Sheol. And also, Satan's not even there. Satan's not trapped anywhere. He's not also, by the way, Satan's not even the king of hell. He's not even in charge. He's not a boss of anything. He'll be in hell. He'll be separated from God just like everybody else. It's not like he's in charge. He's only in charge today, and only because God is allowing it. So he's not in hell. He's not annihilated. And by the way, after this, he's kicked out of heaven, but he's even not going to be annihilated then. What is he going to do next? He's going to get locked up for 1,000 years. Then he's going to get let out, and then he's going to get thrown in the lake of fire. So there is a process to this. Satan is not in hell. He's roaming around. He's roaming around somewhere on the earth today in the spirit realm, whatever's going on, right? But that's what's going on. But like I said, Michael and his angels have kicked him out. This is not the lake of fire. But you can tell Satan is going to start getting riled up because he knows, of course, he get kicked out of heaven. He's a little mad. His time is short. But notice the contrast right now going on here. We read the earlier verses. So remember how it started out with the woman having the child, which is Jesus Christ. And what was he? He was caught up to God's throne. Now what do you have with the dragon? Then the dragon is cast down. He's thrown down. He's cast down out of heaven. So you're seeing Christ is exalted. Christ is lifted up. And Satan is thrown down, expelled, downcast. So you're seeing a deliberate contrast. Christ risen up, Satan thrown down, right? One ascends, one falls. And you're seeing that here. Verse number 9. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. So the great dragon, again, we know that was Satan, was thrown down. So, all right, he was thrown down. So is this talking now? Is this talking about the past, like in the beginning when he was thrown down? Because it does mention the ancient stuff. It's going back to Genesis stuff. Is it talking about then? Or is it talking about now? Because it's talking about Michael is fighting him now, and he's going to get kicked out of heaven, but he's not kicked out of heaven now, right? So when is this? Well, from Luke 10, verse 18, I can read it for you. Remember what Jesus said? Jesus said to his disciples in Luke chapter 10, verse 18, he said to them, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. So he saw it. So Jesus talks about it in past tense. Now it's tricky, because of course he's God, so is he talking about this event in the future tense? I don't think so. He could be. But I don't think so. I think it actually happened in the past. Go to Isaiah chapter 14. Isaiah chapter 14. Jesus is talking about it in the past, and I think he's actually meaning it in the past. But while you're turning there to Isaiah 14, I love, again, this verse is pretty much repeating what happened before. He is thrown down. It's showing that, God's not going to negotiate with Satan. Satan's not going to be able to negotiate access. He's thrown out. He's being cast out. It's repeated over and over and over again, right? It's almost like, hey, and then you lost the game. Hey, remember when you lost the game? Remember when you lost? That's kind of what's happening here. It's that repetition that we're getting, that he was thrown out. Look, Isaiah 14, verse number 12. This is a reference, we believe, to Satan in the past. This is the past. Isaiah 14. How you are fallen from heaven, O day star, son of dawn. How you are cut down to the ground. You who laid the nations low. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven above the stars of God. I will set my throne on high. I will set up the mount of assembly and the far reaches of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. But you are brought down to Sheol, to the far reaches of the pit. So right there, it's talking about some kind of past fall, it seems like. So Satan did fall in the past, but he's going to fall again in the future because it's fallen from heaven there. And Ezekiel 28, I'll read it for you. Ezekiel 28 is the other one. In verse number 12, it says, Thus says the Lord God, you are the signet of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of Eden. Every precious stone was your covering. And it goes on to talk about sardius, topaz, diamond, lists all of them. On the day that you were created, they were prepared. You were an anointed guardian cherub. I placed you. You were on the holy mountain of God. In the midst of the stones of fire you walked. You were blameless in your ways from the days you were created. And it goes on and on and on. But then it says, your heart was proud because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. I cast you to the ground. I exposed you before kings to feast their eyes on you. So, again, in past tense, he was cast down. But Satan never lost access. That was more of like a fall, like almost kind of think about Adam and Eve. Like, don't eat of the fruit or you shall surely die, right? Well, did they die when they ate the fruit? Yes. Well, they didn't fall over dead for hundreds of years. But there was something that happened spiritually. They spiritually died. They fell. They were cut off from God. That same kind of fall happened here. The fall of Satan, very similar. A moral failure, right? This new thing from glorious to profane. He's no longer on God's side. He's now over here, which means he will no longer get power from God. He will now be weaker than the other angels. Because by default, God will give them more power than him. And he does. With Michael and the angels, you can see that, right? So it was more of a moral fall, of the spiritual fall. Now here we are getting the futuristic physical fall, where he'll actually be kicked out of heaven, no longer able to access the spirit realm, will be stuck here on earth. Now, could you imagine what our headlines would look like, the news would look like, if Satan were down here on earth, not in the spirit realm, but running around on earth? It would get chaotic, and I'd imagine it's going to because the Bible said it. But it did, of course, call the ancient serpent. Again, Genesis 3, look at the connection it's making. The enemy that was introduced in Genesis, that serpent in the tree, and that woman, right? What do we hear in Genesis 3, verse 15? I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. That's playing out again. This Genesis 3:15, playing out. It was a reference. This is like a bigger version of it. It's been happening all through time. This is like the culminating event of that happening here, right? Revelation's moving towards that crushing that Genesis 3 talked about, right? The bruising of the heel's already happened with Christ. The crushing of the head, that's what this is talking about. That was prophesied back in Genesis. So in Genesis, the serpent enters. In Revelation, the serpent is judged, thrown down. He'll be crushed later. So you can see it's bookended by God there. Of course, it says who is called the devil. Devil meaning a slanderer, an accuser. That's what we'll see him called later too. He's an accuser. He's always accusing us of sin. Think of it like a courtroom. There's a judge up there. Jesus is your lawyer to defend you. Satan's over there trying to accuse you of all these crimes, all these sins, and get you thrown into hell. And Jesus is there, your defender. So there's all this going on at all times. That's why we get this courtroom language. He's also known as Satan. Remember, these aren't his real names. Devil and Satan, these are not real names. We don't even know his name. And that's actually the disrespectful part. I love it. God wants to disrespect Satan on purpose in that way. We don't know his name. Satan just means an adversary. A devil means an accuser or a slanderer. Satan, or Satan, means an adversary, an opposer. Basically, he opposes God's people, and he opposes God's purposes. But notice all these names that John gives to Satan. He gives him the dragon, serpent, devil, Satan. Why all these names? He's actually telling us about the character of the enemy. He is like a dragon. He's violent and very hostile. He's like a serpent. He's very deceptive, full of deception and deceit. He's a devil. He will accuse you falsely, right? And he's like Satan. He's a Satan. He's an opposer. He'll constantly oppose anything you do. So he's violent, deceptive, an accuser, a slanderer, and opposes anything God does. He is the full-blown enemy of us and the world and God, right? The deceiver of the whole world, it says. That's his main weapon, right? By the way, go back to Genesis. That's how this whole thing started. Did God really say, right? That still is asked today. People ask that today all the time because it's Satan in the background, right? He's always trying to get you to doubt God, just like he did to the woman back here, Eve, right? In the Garden of Eden, right? That's always been the strategy, to deceive. And you can see that deception today. And there's a lot more deception coming. It can continue, right? Deception against God's people, deception about God's plan, what's really going on in the world. There's a lot of deception. It's only going to increase. But again, showing that he was thrown down to the earth. His angels were thrown down with him. So again, showing this Bible's a unified story. What happened started in Genesis. What God promised is coming to fruition and completion, right? A full story unfolding here. And it says, "And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brothers has been thrown down. He accuses them day and night before our God." So now there's this loud voice, this loud proclamation. It's a victory announcement, right? Another victory announcement, right? Now the salvation. So it says now, that's crucial. Something that wasn't there before. Now it's not talking about personal conversion. It's not talking about our salvation. It's talking about it in a kingdom sense. Now the salvation of creation and the world at full, right, has come. So again, it's associating this event, this war with Satan, Satan being thrown down in the middle of the tribulation as the kingdom coming, right? So we saw that. Look at Revelation 11, verse 15. Last chapter, what did it say? "Then the seventh angel blew his trumpet, and there were loud voices in heaven saying, the kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever." So this is tied directly to the seventh trumpet, like I said before. That seventh trumpet, when it's saying the kingdom has come, it's a 3.5-year process, right? But it's tying it to Revelation 12. So Revelation 12 is not some weird random story about dragons and stars and angels, these weird things. No, it's telling us all this stuff is tied. The end is here. What was started at the beginning of Genesis has now come to an end. It is now ending, right? This is all tied together. And that seventh trumpet was what this was talking about, right? It's showing us the whole story. It's giving us a big flashback of everything in the past and why we're at this moment. And then what happens, right? Because the authority of Christ has come. Christ is now kicking him out of heaven. We're starting to see things happen because Satan had access before. Now he doesn't. Things are changing. God's kingdom is coming. And Satan is going to get pushed out further and further and further until eventually, after millennium, he's completely gone, right? So you can see the beginning of the expulsion is happening. Again, there he's thrown down again. He's called an accuser again. Zechariah 3, we didn't go there, but we've gone there before. He accused in Job. He accused in Zechariah, right, about the filthy garments, and God had the filthy garments removed, so you can see that court language again. Who accused them day and night. So that shows you how relentless Satan is today. He's still accusing us, going to God, right, who has us covered, trying to accuse us, falsely accuse us, because God has already covered it. His blood has already, covered everything. So we are safe from his accusations. Verse number 11, it says, so there's a celebration in heaven, and then it says, and they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they loved not their lives even unto death. So it's saying they conquered them after this announcement. Conquered who? Conquered Satan, right? How did they conquer him? Because who is this talking about? This is talking about the martyrs who were killed probably by the beast and by Satan, maybe of all time, maybe during this tribulation, maybe the ones that will come, right? But it says they conquered them. The irony again. Sometimes the Bible's upside down. Those who are persecuted and killed are the victors. They're the conquerors. Why? Because of the blood of the Lamb. That's where victory begins, the blood of the Lamb. It didn't say they won because of what they did. The first thing it says, they won because of the blood of the Lamb, because of what Jesus did. Not human strength, not military power. They didn't put some army together. It was what Jesus did, right? And that's exactly how Israel did it in the past. In Exodus 12, we had a reflection of this. How did they defeat death back then? How did they avoid the death angel back then? By being covered by the blood. They conquered Egypt, and you could say, by the blood of the Lamb, which is Jesus Christ. Right? How do you defeat by the blood? Well, remember, he's the accuser. He accuses them of sin, and the blood of Christ answers and says, nope, that's been paid for, right? That'd be like saying something like, oh, hey, you owe me $100. Like, no, I already paid that for him. It's like, well, he still owes me $500. Like, well, I paid that bill for him too. So that's what's going on here. Satan's always trying to find ways to send us to hell, and the blood is always answering. That's what's going on here. Also, by the word of their testimony. Shows that they were faithful witnesses. They actually believed. And a testimony, they were confessing Christ. They were a loyal witness. So they didn't conquer by silence, but by sharing the good news of the gospel and what Christ had did for them, right? For they loved not their lives even unto death. So they didn't have fear. They didn't value this life, this world more than the next. They put it in its right place, right? Death did not defeat them. They defeated through death. So you see everything is upside down here, which is pretty wild. Psalm 44 talked about this moment too. Psalm 44 talked about the martyrs in verse 22. Yet for your sake we are killed all the day long. We are regarded as sheep to be slaughtered. So throughout history, there's always going to be the plan. Still happens today. You can hear about Nigeria, Christians being killed for their faith. But they defeat Satan. They defeat that dragon. That dragon out there today even killing Christians, right? They are defeated by the blood of the Lamb. That's how victory comes. It comes through the blood of Christ, not through anything we do, which is actually a relief, in my opinion. And then here, verse number 12 continues that thought there. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. So there's this celebration in heaven. It's celebrating, yes, Satan has been defeated, even though, again, we know there's going to be 3.5 years of chaos on earth. More people are going to die. But I love that in the celebration, it says, don't worry, the martyrs are victors. I know it's going to get ugly for 3.5 years. They win. But then it goes on here. Hey, rejoice, O heavens. Therefore, connecting to what just happened with that war with Michael and his angels, throwing the devil down, throwing Satan down. Rejoice, heaven. Why would they rejoice? They're rejoicing because the accuser has been evicted. He's been kicked out, right? It's like the person at your event, some event, or somebody there, and somebody's being a jerk or yelling, like, when they leave. You ever see at an event, somebody's acting, like, really bad in public, and then everybody claps when they leave, somebody takes them out? That's a celebration. Yay, they're gone, right? That can happen sometimes, right? Sometimes you have to call the police, and they have to remove them from environments. It happens. You can watch YouTube videos of this. That's what's going on. They're cheering, like, thank you, he's gone, he's out of here. Because the angels don't have to deal with him. He's not in heavens anymore. So that's why they're celebrating, right? There's worship and celebration. Who's celebrating? Us. We're up there celebrating this. Remember, we're in heaven. The angels, we're all celebrating that Satan has been kicked out. And the Bible actually mentioned this. Psalm 96. Turn to Psalm quick. We have a little bit of time. Turn to Psalm 96, verse 10. Again, I love that God has planted all this throughout the Bible. It's always been part of the plan, hidden all throughout the other 65 books of the Bible. Revelation didn't make it up. It's just kind of a collection, right? Psalm 96, verse 10, talks about this moment to rejoice because God is going to take his kingdom, right? Satan will be defeated. Psalm 96, verse 10, say among the nations, the Lord reigns. Yes, the world is established. It shall never be moved. He will judge the peoples with equity. Look at this. Let the heavens be glad. That's like celebrate. Let the earth rejoice. Let the sea roar and all that fills it. Let the field exult and everything in it. Then shall all the trees of the forest sing for joy before the Lord, for he comes to judge the earth. Now it's really interesting there, because in that one, it's a fuller sense. You notice he told the heavens and the earth and trees on all them to rejoice. But in here he says, O heavens, you who dwell in them, rejoice. So they're rejoicing. But woe to you, O earth and sea. This is a little bit different than that psalm. That psalm saw it in the fuller aspect. Why? Because remember, I just told you, we're only halfway there. Although God has done this, he is reigning. It's going to take 3.5 years to tell the earth to rejoice. Because it's going to be awful for 3.5 years. So at this moment, heaven cannot tell the earth to rejoice because they still got it bad for 1,260 or more days, right? They still have, so that's why there's a little bit of difference in that prophecy. So you can look at these and say, hey, this isn't done yet. You can look at the psalm and look at this and say, hey, there's something wrong here because the earth's not rejoicing over here. And it said it was going to rejoice over here. That's a sign we're not done yet. It has come, but the process is still underway. Why to the earth and sea? Because that's the physical world, the physical dimensions. There's joy in heaven, but there's distress on earth. Why? Because imagine this. Imagine somebody, like, think about this. Think about how landlord would think of this. Some landlord evicts a person because they're not paying rent. They get evicted, and they have nowhere to live. So this other landlord gets them. They're like, oh, great, now I have this problem on my hands. Now they're not going to pay her. Now they're going to cause all these fights and all this chaos, right? So that's why you see this all the time. If somebody gets removed from a problem or somebody gets kicked out and nobody else wants them, like, nope, keep them out of here. I don't want them. That's what's going on here. The earth, like, we don't want Satan. Now the earth has Satan. Full-blown Satan. He's not going back to the heavens and fighting with the angels anymore. He's going to be fighting with humans. So, woe to the earth and sea is right. No coincidence, we're also going to see the earth and the sea. You're going to see the beasts yet that come out. The one beast will come out of the sea. That'll be the Antichrist. The other one will come from the earth. That'll be the false prophecy. You see this earth and sea. The devil says, for the devil has come down to you, because of course Satan lost his heavenly access. And that this is where the fury is going to come in. The reason the Great Tribulation is so great, it's not random. Like, why are the last 3.5 years awful? Well, of course, yeah, the agreement will be broken and stuff, but it's really because he gets kicked out of heaven. That's why all hell breaks loose on earth. It's because Satan is kicked out of heaven. And it reminds me of this. This is, if you are a competitive person, everybody who's competitive hates to lose. The worst part of losing is when the game's not over yet, but you know you lost, right? It's like fourth quarter, you're down by 30, and there's 2 minutes left, but you have to play, and you're furious. And sometimes things out of anger can happen, penalties, all kinds. Like, for example, I used to play people online in Madden, and it's a football game. When you play, these situations would happen. Somebody would call timeout, even though it's a blowout. They call timeout, they'd waste your time, then they jump off sides, then they do pass interference to the play. Well, they're just stalling. They're mad, and they're frustrated, and they're getting their frustrations out on you. This does happen in sports. You'll see penalties happen at the end of games because of frustrations happening, right? That's what's happening here. He knows the game's over. He lost, but he still has to play in the game. That's frustrating when you know you lost. So you go into destructive mode. You go into anger and chaos. And that's what's happening. I don't want to be around him when he's like that. And that's what's going to happen. So woe to the earth and sea. You got an angry devil. He just got kicked out. He's mad. Sorry, guys. This is your problem for the next 3.5 years. But God's conquered. So hey, if you're down there, it's all right. He conquered. It's going to be a little ugly. But God has conquered, right? Because in his great wrath, it does say great wrath because he knows his time is short. And I read it earlier in Daniel 12. It did say, at that time shall rise Michael the great prince, who turns people, and there shall be a time of trouble such as never been seen. Since there was a nation, that's this. Because Satan has never, so these wars going on now, they seem bad. It would be a lot worse if Satan couldn't get to the heavens and he was down here fighting it with them. It would be a lot worse. So it's going to get pretty bad, right? He knows his time is short. So you can see heaven's rejoicing, earth is in woe, it's not good. What's interesting, you have the same event, but different effects. So it's the same thing, but depending on if you're happy or sad about things, depends on your situation, right? Just like, hey, when Christ comes back, we get excited to know it sounds weird. I'm not like a doomsday, like the world's going to end. I don't want that, But we get excited the world's going to end because Christ is going to return. Talk to a person who doesn't believe in Christ about the world ending, way different attitude. Way different. No, I don't want the world. No way. I don't want this to end. Like, we want it. This is awful. There's something better. But to them, there isn't something better. There's something a lot worse, right? That's why the same event can have different aspects. Rejoice, heavens. Woe to you on earth. That's like, hey, Christ has conquered Satan. Rejoice, saints. Woe to you, earth dwellers, who do not believe in Christ. It's going to be bad. But yes, celebrate for us. Same event, two different reactions. That's what's going on here. Satan is in his fury. And that covers the war in heaven. Seems like a complex topic, but when you break it down, you can actually understand what's going on by using the Bible as your help. Does anybody have any comments, questions, thoughts they had? Yes, Paul, go ahead.
Since there is no hell now.
Yeah.
Is there a heaven now? And
oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
If I die now, am I going to instantly be in heaven?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a really deep question. All right, so he said there's no hell now. There's no lake of fire now yet. It's being prepared for them. So is there a heaven now? So there is a heaven, because that's where Satan's at. There's the heavens, the angels, and there is this earthly realm, and there's a place of the dead, but there isn't the hell in that sense. So what he's picking up on, Paul's picking up on something. There's usually a pattern. God is very balanced. If there's no hell yet, is there no heaven yet? And no, there is no eternal heaven yet. That's the new heaven and the new earth. So there will be a new worse hell, lake of fire, and there will be a new better heaven than the ones we have where the angels are at now. There will be a new better earth than we're at now. It'll be very much like this, but in perfect form. Now the other question is an interesting one. When we die, when we go to heaven, instantly it says, absent from the body, present with the Lord. So the basic, most simple answer I can give you, for time's sake, is yes. You will be in some heavenly realm, some spiritual realm with Christ. Now there's a debate. Will you be in some side room? Will you be in some place, your own little mansion? Will we be all together? Or will you get sent right? Do we wake up right at the resurrection? There's a debate about that. No matter who's right, if you get held in this holding room or we get slingshotted here, no matter what, the answer is always when you die, you're with Jesus forever and everything's good. It's never bad. There's no bad situation. You are in the heavenly realm, not here. And then later on, we will all come back to this earth for 1,000 years, live in a kingdom. It'll be good to accept. There'll still be some sin. And then after that, so that's kind of wild to think. You got to remember that. We're going to live for 1,000 years in perfect bodies together. All of us will be hanging out for 1,000 years. We haven't even, think about that. We haven't even done 100 years together yet. And that we'll do 1,000 years together. And then after that, we'll get the new heaven and the new earth. So that's like, it's mind-blowing of all the things yet to come. That's why Satan will get locked up eventually for 1,000 years. Yeah, Matt.
So, I don't want to jump ahead to Revelation 20.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, but the Lamb's Book of Life.
Yes.
I was taught there's also like a book of your records.
Records, yeah, the life review kind of
and
thing.
we will be held accountable.
Yes.
Which is in Scripture. So you're going to talk about that.
Oh, yes.
By the end of the year, I may.
Yeah, maybe. It might be 2027 actually. For that one. That's true.
You mentioned the Book of Truth in Daniel, which is also prophecy in this situation. Did you study what the Book of Truth?
I've done it a while ago. You could do a whole study of all these books, the ones you can be blotted out of, but the Book of Truth. So I have to look into that because I'm not sure. Sometimes there's synonymous things like sometimes they'll say like the staff of Moses, the staff of Aaron, and then sometimes it can be the same thing. So I don't look, but it does have to do with some kind of prophecy.
Titled and I mean,
yep. So there must be
mentioned twice.
And what's really cool, this is where, I don't tell people you have to go read these, but this is where like the Second Temple writings come into place. So you can find other Jewish writings from the Second Temple era that'll expand on a lot of these topics that they just were commonplace back then. Like if we were talking about the Book of Life, Book of Truth, it would maybe have been taught and understood among them. So sometimes reading those Apocrypha books will give you a full understanding. I'll have to study on if there's any difference between that and the other books. And I know there are a handful of them.
I think there's another book mentioned in Malachi.
Yeah, because there's a handful of crowns, handful of books. It gets really, you can keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into this stuff. Okay. But yes, that's a great one. That's a good study to do, the books. Maybe we'll do that, the books of truth, the books of life, all that stuff. That's great. Yeah, Dave.
From Genesis till this point now in Revelation, Satan's been skipping along doing his thing.
Yeah.
Free reign to accuse, destroy, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't he yet, from this point on, still doing God's finished work here on earth? And he doesn't even know that?
That's the best part. The best part about Satan, and that's kind of the funny thing is you didn't go back here. He killed those saints. He killed the martyrs. And they defeated him with that. So think about that. Satan got defeated by killing them. Killing the ones he killed was defeated, according to what this says. So you can see what Dave's getting at. Everything's backwards. Satan thought he was sending people to hell. Well, of course he was. When he accuses people that don't believe in Christ, he got to send them to hell in his mind, right? But it didn't work on us. But he was really being defeated. All part of God's plan. He killed Jesus, thinking he was going to wipe him out. That was part of the trap, part of the plan. Same thing here. He's sent down here, and he's probably thinking in his mind, well, at least cause turmoil here. And God goes, good. That's what I want you to do. Because these people need judged. And just like I judged Israel with Assyria, just like I judged Judah with Babylon, I'm going to judge the earth dwellers with you. And what Dave's saying is true. God is using, Satan is actually, this is part of his job. He didn't know this is in his job description, but God had this part of his plan. That's how he will judge the earth dwellers through this wrath that I would not want to be around for. So yeah, Satan can't ever escape. Every time Satan kicks back, that's part of the script and he doesn't know it. Could you imagine trying to make somebody mad? You're so mad you just want to go against them. Every time you find out you're always following their plan, everything you did, that would be aggravating, right? That's the feeling of Satan, but he will be defeated, utterly defeated. Well, thanks again, everybody. Make sure to read ahead. Not sure if I'll be here next week, depending on if Jade's here or not, if she has a baby. But Matt is on standby. At some point, we will finish Revelation. We'll jump back into it. But go ahead and read ahead. Read the rest of Revelation 12. Go ahead to 13. Have a great week. Until next time, keep your lamps trimmed and burning.